Well, happy end of 2024. This is John Sluice with Entrust CPA, coming to you with a checklist of some things to consider and make sure you have in place before the end of the year. I know we're only a few weeks out towards December 31st, and so there's not a lot of room and time for doing anything major from a tax point of view, but there is plenty that still needs to be done and considered to make sure you get it in before the end of the year. There are certain items that can be taken care of after the end of the year, such as contributions to your IRA or your HSA. But there are many things that have to be done by December 31st. And keep in mind, there's some holidays in there too. And so if there takes some things with banks and financial institutions, you have to give them time to process and do those items. So I'm gonna go through a list here. They'll probably be on the side too, but just keep in mind as you go through these things, they don't all apply to you, but just make sure you've thought through each one of them. So first one is if you are an employee and you're contributing to your retirement account through your employer, this also is for business owners that have a wage and we're using it for, say, a simple IRA, make sure that you've put in through wages what you want to put in. Because once the year end is done, you can't go back and add more. Also look at your estimates for 2024 that we set up. Make sure you're safe harbored. Consider whether or not you need to bump up your fourth quarter estimate. And if you need to, to avoid a penalty or interest, if it's going to be significantly different, you might want to do it through wage withholding instead, like for federal withholding your wages rather than an estimate. So make sure you're safe harbored. If you need help with that, let us know. We do that on a pretty regular basis for most of the clients that we work with, but if we haven't communicated with you on that and you do have a question on it, let us know. FTE payments. So if you're in the state of Michigan and you have elected to be treated with an FTE, so it's the flow through entity tax. Those payments, while not technically due until January or March 15th, if you're a cash basis taxpayer, which many of you are, it makes it a whole lot easier and a lot more beneficial if you can get it in by December 31st and have it paid, because then you get the deduction for federal purposes. That's why we do that. So make sure you get that payment paid by December 31st. Things here, if you do itemize contributions to charitable organizations, make sure you get those in place because those aren't something you can do backwards. And then two big items here are related to retirement accounts are your RMD, if you have that. So if you are of the age where you have an RMD, that's required minimum distribution, that must be withdrawn by the end of the year. So make sure that you've got that and met the requirements for that. If you're unsure, talk to your financial advisor on that to make sure you get that in there. And then the other one related to retirement accounts are Roth conversions. So if you've thought about doing a Roth conversion, we've probably talked pretty extensively if you're going to do those or not and done planning related to it, but that has to be done by the end of the year. You can't go back retroactively and do that. And those oftentimes need time through the financial institution. So make sure you probably should have already communicated with them. And if you haven't, you need to get on the phone sooner than later to get those in the works before it. And then lastly, take this chance to do, am I where I thought I'd be for the year end? Like for businesses, did I have anything new? Or if you're individual, if something happened that we weren't planning on, and just make sure that you're close to what you thought you would be. And if you have to adjust your plan, right? So if you ended up getting an extra payment from a customer that you weren't planning on, or you spent some other dollars that you hadn't thought you were going to, so you can adjust and make these last minute things in place. So that then correlates with following through on some of the very last minute items that we had talked about and set in the plan, such as purchasing equipment, buying supplies in advance, doing some extra invoicing maybe ahead of time, maybe some year-end bonuses that you might not otherwise do. So those that we've probably created a list of, well, if this happens, then do these. So maybe just do a gut check just to make sure that you're where you are compared to where you thought you would be. Now, a few items that aren't necessarily have to be done by the end of the year, but you might want to be, would be to consider the fourth quarter estimate. So it's technically due on January 15th, but several individuals like to have that taken care of and paid for in December. So that's something to think about. And then while not specifically related to taxes, and in fact, we're going to have a whole separate video, we'll have a link on this here, related to this coming up here in Michigan. If you are a Michigan business owner, the new paid sick leave law goes into effect in the end of February. It has some significant changes for business owners, including the requirement to pay are to provide paid sick leave for part-time and even potentially seasonal employees. And so if you're a business that isn't doing this, you need to be considering this for how you're going to roll it out, how you're going to implement it. So again, I'm going to have a whole separate video, but why I bring it up here is if you're doing year-end bonuses and year-end wage adjustments, like raises for next year, if you're going to have to incur some costs related to implementing this, you might want to roll that into the announcements for raises and bonuses and factor that in, because hey, if you're going to give a 50-cent raise, but then all of a sudden have to turn around and give an additional sick time, you might want to incorporate those two together. So do those hand in hand here at the end of the year. Again, look at that video. It's going to be much more information out there. Give us a call as well on those two. But as you go through this list, again, I'm going to say them here again very quickly. Verify your retirement contributions, make sure you're safe harbored, make sure you make your FTE payment, make sure your contributions are taken care of if you're going to do them, your RMDs, or your required minimum distributions, your Roth conversions are in place, and doing just a double check to make sure you thought you're where you are compared to where you thought you would be. That's a lot of information there. Should be fairly straightforward to go through them. If you have any questions on them, let us know. Give us a call. We're here all year long. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a very Merry Christmas.